Hello, this is a video to go over the general use of the free HMIS comparable version of EmpowerDB. So we're talking about how to add in new clients, how to look up clients, how to edit their existing records, and that whole process. There's going to be a separate administrative training video, and you can find a link to that in the description of this video, and that will go over how to do the initial setup of the system, how to add user accounts and run the actual HUD reports. So go take a look at that if you're interested in any of those things. But for this, it should be pretty easy how to learn how to use the system. The first bit is probably going to be the trickiest, and just how to get onto the database. EmpowerDB is unique in that the data that's stored on the servers is encrypted with an encryption key that only your organization knows. So in order to have that encryption key be put on your computer, we have to go through an initial process for any new computer that begins to use your version of the database. So you will want to look to your administrator's organization for what the link should be for how to get to your version of EmpowerDB. It's going to be something like empowerdb.com/your organization's acronym or your organization's first word or two, something like that. So on this one, I have a fake organization called A New Place, and so I'm logging in at empowerdb.com/a new place. And I see this screen to create an access point. So I'm going to show you the first option here, and that is to send an approval request to a database administrator. This is the option that I recommend for pretty much all just general use of the system. I'll go over it quickly here. If you want a more in-depth video, you can watch this, click on this link and watch this. And I also want to point out that so I do say that this is something you only have to ever do one time per computer. And if you keep seeing this screen and you think, wait a minute, he told me that I only had to do this one time, it's because there's a setting kind of wrong on your browser and you need to go fix it. And so this help file that you can access here will explain to you the 3 different things that could possibly be wrong. And I guarantee you that if you do those 3 things, you will not have to see this create an access point screen every time you use the system. So let's send an approval request to a database administrator. It's going to ask you a couple questions about your computer and yourself. This is not, meant to be trick questions. We're just trying to get a name for your computer. So if you say that you're using a laptop and that your name is Andre, then your computer is going to be called Andre's laptop. All right. So it just kind of helps your administrator out to kind of know who's submitting this request. All right. Then we're going to press the Submit Request button. But before we do that, just want to make sure you see that you only have 60 seconds to have your administrator approve this request. So you're going to want to make sure that your administrator is ready and signed into their version of the database before you press the Submit button. If you press the Submit button and then call your administrator, they're going to have like this really intense, 58 seconds to jump onto the computer and approve your request. So get them ready and call or shout down the hall, whatever, before you press the Submit button. So we've done that, and I press Submit, and now the timer goes. And in this other window here, I have kind of pretending that this is an administrator's computer. They've set their background to be red, and they're going to reload their home page, and they're going to see that Andre's laptop is trying to gain access. And then we will go through and we will put in my password. The administrator will put in their password to say that they are an administrator and they approve of this request. And then they come back here and success. We can now log in. All right, let's click the button to log in. And now we have just a spot to put in your username and your password. If you forgot your password, you can click here. Go see your administrator for what your username is and what they have set for your initial password. Once you do that, you'll log in, and I'll just go back over this window that I had before and pretend that we are now fully logged in. All right, let's add in a new client. Here on the home page at the top, we have the Add New Client button. If your organization has multiple shelters or multiple contracts with HUD, you will see these checkboxes to say which program we want to enroll this client into. If you don't have multiple contractor shelters, you won't see a screen like this. We'll click continue. And now here are all the fields that HUD requires to be filled in. So I'm not really going to go over all of these because I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory, or if they're not, there's at least kind of, HUD has documentation out there for how these questions should be answered, and kind of should listen to them and not me on how to answer things like this. So I will just kind of say that the data, again, the text data that gets entered into EmpowerDB gets encrypted. And so we can't see what it is. If you're still uncomfortable about putting in names, you can just say like first name client, last name 1001, and maybe on your end you've got some way to associate client numbers with who they are. We kind of feel like whatever other way that you have is probably not as secure as the zero-knowledge encryption setup that we have here. So kind of do suggest just putting first and last names. But then here, there's this name data quality. So HUD has this table where it's checking, how well you know the names of people that you are coming into your shelter. And so you could say, you could leave the last name blank and say full name reported, and it would essentially look like you've entered in their full name, but probably shouldn't do too many shenanigans when it comes to this kind of stuff. So do what you think is best, or what your organization has told you for this kind of thing. Very similar situation. Social security numbers, this is really huge, conundrum of what to do in the domestic violence world about what to put in for social security numbers. Here you really could just say full social security number reported. Maybe you feel comfortable saying this and say, well, it's not in the database, but at least we know it. Again, it's hard for us to give guidance around what you should do with that. It seems like every local COC has tells people to do something different about their response to these types of questions. Date of birth. This one's kind of fun. So whenever you look at the date field, you'll click on the date, and it brings up this little calendar. You don't have to use this calendar. Like somebody, it was the 72 and then April. Like you could just click there and say April 12th, 1972, and that's basically the same thing. So it gives you the age, and you say, okay, yeah, that sounds right. All right. So these calendars, whenever you see this, it's more just a tool to help you if you want. And then similarly, you have to confirm, yes, I have this full date of birth, or they only told me partial date of birth, and in that case, you would leave that blank, or any of those options. Okay, we're answering race. You can say that people have multiple races, or you could just say they don't know, or they refused, or we did not collect it. All right. Ethnicity is basically HUD's way of checking Hispanic or non-Hispanic. Gender, again, I didn't say I was going to do all this. Sometimes you might click on an answer and then a new answer will pop up. Notice that some of the questions after we answer them, they're highlighted and then they are not highlighted anymore. That's because this is a question that HUD, HUD doesn't require most of these questions to be filled in, but it's still good to have them in so that you don't raise any eyebrows. So when I answer them, it goes from being yellow to not yellow, and then you'll see my data completion score will go up. So as I'm answering those, it goes up, and again, 100% would be a great target for this. All right, yes, yes, yes to all these. All right. Maybe their first contact with you was that Wednesday. They've moved into the shelter. And now we have to do a program enrollment. So you will see a field here called room, or maybe maybe I should change this to be something like room/unit. This is just a generic, drop down. Your organization will set this up to be in different ways. Maybe it's a list of rooms, maybe it's a list of shelters. Maybe they've just decided, we don't need to track, what different rooms, shelters are people in. We just want to say they're in contract B starting on a certain date. So this will be different for everybody. All right, so pick the option that you think matches best. And there's project start date. I think this is essentially saying the move-in date. So they move in on Friday. And more questions. They are this and that and that. All right, get all those filled in. if somebody moves out, you would go in and you would fill that project exit date, but right now they haven't moved out, so we'll leave that blank. All right, and we're going to talk about a little later. I'm going to show you what happens if somebody changes, moves to a different shelter, or changes, or it has like an approved absence for a while. So we'll go over that later. Next section here is disabilities. So HUD wants to know what somebody's disabilities are on kind of an ongoing basis. So as of the 9th, when we did this intake, we know that yes, this person has a physical disability, and yes, it's expected to be long, continued, and infinite duration, etc. And let's just say they have no to all these other disabilities. All right. Now let's say, a few months later, the disability status changes. All right, maybe, gosh, what do I do an example here that's not offensive? All right, we'll just do chronic health condition. All of a sudden they tell you about this. So instead of going through here and saying, oh yes, now they have a chronic health condition, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to say include additional entry. And now we can say, well, as of this date, they still have that physical disability. No to that, and now yes to this. All right, and so if you answer it this way, then the system will have the data that it needs to run the report and say that, when they first moved in, their disability status was this, and then maybe this entry we're putting in when they moved out at the end of the month, or maybe, so HUD kind of expects you to definitely come in here and do an additional entry when somebody moves out, but you're also expected to do an additional entry when, if somebody has been in your program for a year. So annual assessment is what they call it. If you're in a shelter where no one is really going to be staying for a year, then you don't have to worry about that. But if that is potential, you should come in here and make sure you do an update 1 year after their project start date. Very similar, this income and benefits section here. So as of that date, do they have an income from any source? Yes, they do. They have some earned income, and enter the monthly amounts, maybe 2,000, I don't know. All right, and none of these other things. Hope you have a comfortable mouse. Click, 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 click. Do they have any benefits? Yes, they do. Here's all the benefits. So no, no, yes, no, no, no. All right. Are they covered by health insurance? Yes, they are. And now here are the options for that. All right, so same exact thing. If this is their income on their project start date, if they have stay with your program for a year, or when they move out, you will want to come back here and say include additional income entry, and then fill in all the information again for their latest income status. Last question, number of household members. So if we just say 1, then that's it, because this person is in a household of 1, it's themselves. But if we say 2, now we have a form to fill in some really basic information about who their other household members are. If we would pick 3, now we have 2 extra fields. So did I even put in a fake name? All right, let's give this a whirl. Mary Matthews. Now let's do Gary Matthews is born quite recently, and someone else born a few years prior. Okay, so this is just some basic information to get us started. We're going to have to fill in some more things about these people later. Add a new client. All right, Mary has been created. Let's go back to the home page and go look her up. So we're just maybe logged into the database and new, and we can go and say, okay, let's look up Mary. And now here's her basic information. So this is not meant to be the whole set of information about her, just kind of what you need to know to confirm that you're looking at the right record. And from here, if you want to go edit the intake page that you were just on, you would click on adult intake if you feel like this is a person who is an adult, or you click on child intake if you feel like this is a person who is a child. So you will click there and you can go in and say, oh, I forgot to answer the gender question. She's female. Now I'm at 100%. Save changes. And then at the top here, you can see this little navigation. I think the official word is breadcrumbs. So we are at the home page. We are looking at the Elm Street shelter clients. We are looking at Mary Matthews, her basic information, and now we are at her adult intake. But I can click back to here and go back to her basic information. And I can see that, you know, no matter if she's being considered as an adult or a child, we're 100% complete on the data that needs to be in for her. Let's say you really just wanted to go put in some new income information. So you're kind of expected to put in at least new income information, annual assessment, or when they move out, but it's totally fine to go in and put in new information anytime you want. It kind of makes it so that when that's in there already for when if they were suddenly move out, at least it's there. So you could come in here and you can say include additional entry and fill in the information, or what you could do is you can, at this basic information page, go directly to the income benefits insurance point in time. Here's her existing entry that she has now. And we can say instead add new entry, and then maybe she lost her job. And so we go in and put in all the, I'm just not going to click it. Submit new entry. All right, there it is. All right. So what do we need to talk about next? Let's go look at the program list. So on the home page, from any page of the database, you can mouse over program lists up there, and you can see your different program lists you have access to. If your organization only has one program that's been set up, you'll not see a program list drop down. You'll just see Elm Street Shelter or whatever it is. And then here's a list of everybody who is currently in the shelter. So let's go look up Mary and see why she's not being listed as being in the shelter. All right. Because we put her in contract B. All right, so let's put her in the Elm Street Shelter, room 1. And now when we go back to Elm Street Shelter, there she is. All right. Mary, she moved in November 9th, and she's in room 1. And there's her birthday, if it's helpful for you. We see that she has 2 household members. It's likely, could potentially be just always her children, if you're in a type of program that household members are always going to be children. And they're in light gray. And this is meant to tell you that we know that they exist, but there's no record of them being in the shelter at this time. And so maybe that's the case. Maybe, she moved in, she has 2 children, and these children will move in a week later because of some custody issues. And so that's fine to keep them like this. But we probably want to click on the child, go to the child intake, and fill in all the information that needs to be filled in about the child. All right, so it's going to be lots of similar stuff. And here we have to do a program enrollment to say, all right, they need to move in to a room. Because most of the time when household members are moving in with the head of the household, it's probably the same information. And so we can say copy from the parent like that. And it's going to copy that they went into room 1 as of this date, and then you'll have to answer in the rest of the information that would be specific to just this participant. All right, so again, all the same information. Got to put in the disabilities entries. And then for children, thankfully you don't have to put in all the income information. You just need to put in their health insurance status. So we can say, yes, the child has this health insurance. Just like with the adults, if their health insurance status changes, or at exit or annual assessment, you need to include initial entry. And if disabilities changes, you need to include initial entry there. Save changes. Now when we go look at our program list, we see that Gary's in black. He's also moved in November 9th and room 1. Almost done. We really just kind of need to go over a couple of the weird situations that could come up. So let's say Mary moves out, switches to a different shelter. So she's gone from Elm Street shelter to contract B. So all we have to do is say, okay, now she's in both. Save changes. And now when we go to create a new program enrollment, we say, okay, now she is in contract B, starting on this date. We probably want to go back over to her existing enrollment and say, okay, she moved in to this shelter, and then right away she moved out, and she moved to a transitional living program like this, and then add a new entry. And now we can say, okay, now she moved in, she moved out of us and into a program that we serve. And we can add in this whole new entry for her move into this other program. So that's what you would do if you had multiple contracts and you needed to kind of have this client move from one to the other. You do not need to re-add them into the system. All her demographic data is still going to be in here. You don't need to re-enter this for her being in this new contract. It's all there. Everything about the new contract that HUD needs to know that's specific to her enrollment into the new contract is in this program enrollment form. All right, let's get somebody else and do the other weird situation for, let's say somebody kind of is absent from the shelter for a while and then comes back. So let's say they were in starting on Friday and now they've moved out. You can say exit reason, and you can really pick pretty much anything here because it's eventually not going to matter because they haven't truly exited. We're going to say, I don't know, other, save changes. Maybe you would say like staying with friends, living with family, temporary tenure. So, a few extra days away to stay with mom. All right, we're going to add a new entry and we're going to say they came back on this date. They went right back into room 1, and then we have to fill out all this information again, unfortunately. All right, so what's going to happen is the system will recognize that there was just a few days gap between this enrollment and that enrollment, and so it really should be considered the same stay, and it's going to take all the information from this stay to say, fill in the data that ends up being on the report. But there are certain other parts of the HUD report that will say, how many people stayed on the third Wednesday in October or something. And if somebody happened to not be there, be away during that time, they would not show up as being in the shelter in that time because they really weren't. So the HUD report should be able to handle these types of situations. If somebody is absent from the shelter for more than 2 weeks, the system will consider that to be a whole separate stay. And you can reach out to us if you feel like it needs to be something different than 2 weeks or your thoughts around that. Okay, yeah. Listen, that's really all there is. You look people up through this program list or by looking them up over here. Fill in one of these links over here and you just get the data in there and you go run the report, and the other video that I made for administrative training shows you what to do for that. If you really want to log out, mouse over your name up there, click log out. If you want to change your background color and put some background patterns and spice things up, you can do that. And if you're having a really rough day and need a compliment, you can come here and click this compliment me button and you'll get a random compliment from the day. So let's see ours for right now. Oh, it froze. Okay. The Property Brothers would never trick you into thinking that first house was within your price range. Oh, that's really nice, the Property Brothers, not to do that to you. Okay, so I guess we'll end on that. I hope everything goes well and wish you all the best. Thanks.